Hello there, welcome back to the Soda Shack. We're going to be making a toy box for my granddaughter. It's MDF, and as you know, we don't do a lot of planning, we make things up as we go along. So we'll see how it unravels. It's going to be obviously quite sturdy, and I'm just toying with the idea with the lid. I'm not quite sure yet, but I might make the lid so it can be taken off entirely and used on the floor as a blackboard, but we'll see how that progresses. So I'll get set up and fetch you back in a moment. Right, the first thing we've got to do is get these panels roughly cut to size. These edges aren't very good, so what I'm doing, I want 550 across here. So I've set the track saw up to cut 560, and then I can send it through table saw just to square everything up. So I'm going to cut 4 of these at 560, and then we can start cutting them to width and everything else. Fire's on, so we're all nice and warm, and I'll show you cutting one of these. You don't need to see cutting them all, but we can cut one and then see how we go. Right, so that's the first one cut. I'll go ahead, cut another 4 of those. I'm not going to get them all out of that one piece, but we've got plenty more to play at. I'll get these 4 cut up, and then I'll fetch you back and we'll start sizing for the width we want the toy box. Right, I've actually ended up cutting 5 of these. Like I say, it's only rough sized, so that makes it just a bit more manageable. We can get them on table saw now and square everything up. Get the, obviously, front and back, 2 sides, and probably the bottom out of these. Right, we've got the table saw set now. We're at 550. We're just going to throw all these panels up now, so they're all identical. At the minute, as you know, we've cut them at 560, and then some of these ends are not very good, so we'll get rid of them and just true everything up on the table. So I'm only going to do 4 of them, because obviously one of these is for the bottom, so that's going to change size altogether. I'll cut that one later. So I'll get the saw going and get these cut down, then I'll fetch you back. Just shows this table saw how good it is when you can cut strips of MDF off like that. Normally what they do, they just splinter up and all break up, but to get something that thin off a piece of MDF, not bad going. Right, so I've got these 4 cut now, so I'm just going to get everything set up to cut this bull nose off, because I don't want this bull nose, and then we can start cutting these to length and then start putting some stuff together. Right, what we're doing here, this is the edge we've just cut on the table saw, so let's get the big square, and without letting it slide all over, marker's line, and we'll cut that off with track saw. That gives us a square, a true square edge then to work everything else off. What we've just done there then is we've cut the bull noses off each end, and that's now cut to the length I want, which is 900mm. So I've done 2 of those at 900. They're just squared off ready. So I'm going to work out the width, see what size I want them cut. Right, so what I'm wanting to do here is make it appear as though it stood on legs. So we're going to mark out and cut a small channel out, which will make that look like a foot. So I'll get that marked out, and not going mad, I'm only going I'd say 30mm. Right, 30mm up, and I reckon a 50mm leg. We'll go in at 50 either side. And once we've cut this section out here, and we've got all 4 sides, it'll make it look like the corners are sat on legs. It also, if you put it on a solid floor, if the floor's uneven, it stops any rocking, because you just sat on 4 points instead of the entire bottom. It just makes it a bit easier to sort of balance up a bit. Alright, I'll get set up to cut these out, and we'll do the same on all 4 pieces. So we're going to use a track saw again to do the long line. Obviously starting and stopping, then we'll nibble the corners out and just use a handsaw or the jigsaw just to cut the straights. So we'll get this done. Right, because it's a circular saw, when you go to that line, obviously the underneath scoops back. So you just need to nibble this out. As you can see, what we're creating is the effect that it's on feet, basically. So as we stand it up, that's what we're going for. So it's stood on its own feet, and then we're going to do the same on all 4. So all 4 sides are on their own feet, and then we'll start fastening it together. So I'll get the other 4 cut out, and then I'll fetch you back when they're done. Right, got a bit ahead of myself. I've got the front and the back cut for the feet, but I didn't tell you how we're going to work out how deep we want this. Like I've said, no hard and fast rules, no nothing. You work out what size you want it, but what you need to remember is whatever overall size you want, you've got to knock your 18mm front off and your 18mm back off the sides that you're going to cut, because they're going to go inside. Unless of course I'm putting my sides on the inside of there. If you're putting them on the outside, obviously you don't need to knock that off. But just remember, if you're doing something that needs to fit into a certain space, and you are going to put your sides there, that you need to knock off the thickness of the front and the back, whatever thickness that is you're using. So just don't forget that. So I'm going to get the sides cut now. It's only the same as this. Like I said, I'm not sure what size I'm going to do it yet, but I'll work that out in a second. I'll get them cut, I'll get these out, and then I'll fetch you back. Right, as we were saying before, we've cut that one at 50, but to get our 50 across there, you need to knock your 18mm off to give you a total of 50 there. And then that keeps both your legs running round the corner both the same width. Right, now we've got all 4 pieces cut. What we're doing now is just measuring out, cutting, drilling the holes ready for screwing together. So it's time now, just going to countersink them so that we can fill over the screw heads, and then it's time to get some glue out, some screws, and start putting this thing together and get his main box built. And then we can measure and cut the bottom, get the bottom screwed in, and start filling and sanding, and just get this main bit done, and then we can start putting some fancy bits on it and sorting it out. Right, we've got this holes countersunk now, so they're all ready. Done both back and front. That one's done over there. So we'll get some glue out now, get a screwdriver, and we'll get it put together. Right, so we're going to get some glue on here. I can reach it. Right, we just need to do that to the other 3 sides, and then we've got a box. So I'll get them done and I'll fix. Right, so that's our main body of his box done, and now you can see with the feet what we're on about. We need to fill these, sand them. Obviously all these joints need sanding and making smooth, and then sealing before we paint it. And that's the inside. So what we're going to do now is cut the bottom, get the bottom fastened in so it's all sorted, and then I can start working on the top and see what that turns out like. Might not be what I first thought, but who knows, we'll see what happens with it. Right, what we're doing now is, these are just some thin bits of scrap. You can use MDF or whatever you've got kicking about. What I'm doing, I'm fastening these on the inside, on the bottom, and then once I've cut the square out for the bottom, as that comes down, it'll sit on there, run some glue round, and then just supports the bottom while the glue sets and everything. Obviously just put them in with nail gun at the minute. If you don't have a nail gun, same again, you can use small screws, panel pins with the hammer. It's all doable with just standard tools if you want to use the standards. Right, now I've got these fastened in on all 4 sides. Then what we're going to do now is, I've got another piece of MDF sat there, turned it upside down, and then it's just a matter of drawing round the top. Then we'll lift it off, cut it out. That gives us our base then, and then that will just slide along, sit in there. And once we've got some glue on both sides, leave it to set. That gives us a nice sturdy base then, that will hopefully hold a mountain of toys. Right, so we now have the bottom cut. I say put glue on the underside, and that's just sat in there now, nice and snug. And when the glue's gone off, that'll be nice and solid. And we're just going to start, got this to start measuring up and cutting for the top, and then we'll see how the top sits. Like I say, I think I'm going to turn the top into a blackboard, so give us something to play with. Right, got the lid cut. That's all cut to size. You can see from the pencil marks that I've got here, that's the overhang I've got all the way round. Then I've gone minus the 18mm for the thickness of the MDF, and then I've pinned these little bits of scrap lats on all the way round, so that when I flip this over, this is the underneath, and it goes on the box, they stop it from sliding off. Right, so you can see now that there's a bit of movement, which we want. We don't want it too tight. And then they just sit on the inside. Oh, let's pick it. It should be picking that up. And stop it from sliding off either way. Like I said, we've got some filling to do now, a lot of sanding. All these bare edges, what I do, I seal them with PVA and water. So it's 3/4 PVA to 1/4 water. Mix it nice and thick, paint it on, let it dry, then give it a very light sanding with some 400 wet and dry. Then give it another coat of PVA, sand it again, and that stops, when you paint it, stops it all from going furry and standing up really rough. Gives you a nice smooth finish for your paint to go to. Morning. Right, we're back in Soda's shack and doing a bit more work on Harlow's Toybox. We left it last time, done the filling, so need to get all this sanded up now and get the top sanded, so we're all ready. And then what I've got to do is seal these edges, otherwise when we paint them all the MDF goes fluffy and rough and horrible. So I'll show you how I seal the edges. May not be how everybody else wants to do it, but it works for me. Right, I'll get all the sander set up, and then I'll fetch you back when we're ready to start sanding it all up. Right, this is the sander we're going to be using for this. It's called a dual action sander. It's an electric version of what the car sprayers use when they're rubbing your car down. They use the air versions of it, and what it does, it doesn't just spin in circles, it sort of oscillates, and you get the double action, so you don't get the scroll marks in your work. And they do work really well. The only thing you've got to make sure of is you have some sort of extraction. If you haven't got the hoover plugged into that, within about 5 minutes I won't be able to see in here at all with the dust. They really are messy things, but they work really well. If you've got your dust extraction on, you have your pads with the holes in, and like I said, they take material down really good. So I'll get this set up with hoover, and then we'll get it all sanded off. Right, I've got the hoover plugged in, so I'll start making some noise now and get this sanded. As you can see now, that does a pretty quick job of getting all that smooth, and that's what we start with. So I'll get the other 3 corners done, and then once I've got it all sanded up, we'll swap sanders, because I need the little palm sander to do these edges. So we'll swap the sanders over, and we'll get on with the edges and that. And then we can start getting some sealer on these to stop them blowing. Right, just swapping over now to the palm sander for these edges. Just putting a new sheet on it. use this to put the holes in for the dust extraction. Literally just press it on, pull it off, you've got your holes. That came with the sander, and I've done another video on a little jig I made to cut these. If you want to have a look at that one. Right, same again, I've got dust extraction on this, so I'm just going to plug that in and then we'll sand these edges up. One of the things you've got to be careful with when you're using these palm sanders is try and look down your work and keep the sander square to your work, because it can roll off and you end up then with your edges curving and not staying nice and flat. It's just keep an eye on it and take your time and you're fine. As I've said in previous videos that we've done, I use all these tools because I've got them. I've spent the best part of my adult life collecting these tools and what have you. But you can do all this just with basic hand tools. You can cut all these panels out with a good sharp handsaw. You can do all this sanding if you need to do by hand. Everything that I do in here can be replicated with basic hand tools. As I've said before, I use these tools because I've got them and makes my life easier. Right, we've got these edges sanded up. They're not perfect, they don't need to be just yet. What we're going to do is mix our solution up in a minute. I'll show you how that goes, and then get that on, 2 coats of that, and then give it a final sand to smooth it off. I'm just going to do the same now with the lid, with the edges of the lid, get that done, and then we'll start sealing. Right, so all the edges are done. What I've just done as well is, the camera will pick that up, I've just been in, same again, just using the sander on a 45-degree angle. I've just gently knocked all the sharp corners off, inside and out, and then rounded these off just so just makes it a little smoother for her when she's playing on it. I've done the same with this, both sides, just knock the corners off as I've sanded and knocked the sharp edges off. Just makes it a little bit safer for her. Right, it's time now to get the hoover out, hoover all these edges, make sure there's no dust in them, clean them all up, and then we can get some sealer mixed, get that on, let it dry, get another coat on it, and then we can start sanding that up and getting these edges nice and sealed. Right, this is the way I seal the edges of MDF before it's painted. That's just regular PVA glue or sealer or whatever you want to call it. I do it 3/4 glue and then 1/4 water, just to thin it down a bit, give it a good mix up, and then we paint that on, let it dry, paint another coat on, let that dry, and then paint a coat on, give it a light sand, and then another coat and a light sand. And right, so what we do is we paint a coat on the edges, leave it to dry, very light sand with some 400 grit, something like that. 360, 400 grit will do it, and then give it another coat, let that dry, another light sand, and then that's perfectly sealed then, and you don't get that raising and fluffiness that you would if you don't seal. So I'll get some water in this, get it mixed up, and we'll get it painted on. So this is what I mean by the mixture. The line there, that's where the glue was, the PVA, and you can just see where the amount of water we've put in. So it's 75%, 25%, or if you're in old money like me, 3/4 and 1/4. Now I'm just going to mix this up, give it a really good mix, and then we're ready for painting it on. Right, got our sealer mixed. All that's left to do now is paint all the edges. And you don't want too much on, but if you skimp on it, then you get spots where it comes through and goes fluffy when you paint it, which is what we don't want. That's what we're trying to avoid. Let's get a nice even coat on. Your first coat dries really quickly because obviously it just soaks straight into the end of the MDF. I've tried all different ways. I've been on YouTube looking at all the other guys that do this. Some people say to use wood filler and actually fill and then sand it. It does work, but I find it a bit faffy. Other people might disagree. But from all the ones I've tried, I prefer this method. Seems to give me the best results. Right, as I said, the first coat just dries really quickly. So all I've got, I'm just using some 240 grit, and it's just a very light rub over. You'll see it turn like a whitey colour. Provided you've got it all turning white, that's all it needs. Doesn't need rubbing down as such, just a wipe over. And you can already feel it's a lot smoother than what it was before we started this. And it's literally, there's no work in it, it is just like a wipe over. Right, that's it all sanded. Same again, quick hoover off, second coat on, let that dry, and just another light rub over again, and that's then ready when we're ready for painting. I've got a few more bits to do to it to fancy it all up before we start painting, and I've got to find some bright pink paint. I think it's going to be bright pink with glitter in it. Right, that's the second coat on everywhere, and as you can see, we've hardly used any. Right, that's everything given the second coat. I've just sanded it all and hoovered it again, so them edges now are ready for painting. I can move on now and get some of the other stuff done. I might put a decorative corner on each, running down each side, just to make a bit of a lip. I don't know yet, I might just leave it the same. Like I say, I never plan these things, it's all make it up as you go along and see what we end up with. This project's going to be far too big to get on one video, I think, so I'm going to split it into a few videos. So we'll probably end this one here and pick it up again in the next video and see what we get done from there. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. If you are interested in it, like I say, give us a like and a subscribe, and you can get to the next one then. Catch you later.